The morning sun was just breaking over the horizon when I heard the first scream. I was in my barn, mucking out stalls like I did every morning at 5 a.m., when a high-pitched shriek cut to the peaceful Texas dawn. My horses barely flinched. They'd grown accustomed to the chaos that had become our life ever since the Wellington Heights HOA decided my 40-acre ranch was somehow their jurisdiction. I dropped my pitchfork and jogged toward the sound, my boots crunching on the gravel drive. That's when I saw her, Patricia Hendricks, the HOA president, standing at my front gate with her phone raised high, recording video of my property like she was documenting a crime scene. "Can I help you, Patricia?" I called out, wiping my hands on my jeans. She whirled around, her perfectly coiled blonde hair not moving an inch despite the morning breeze. Her face was already red with indignation, which was pretty much a default state whenever she dealt with me. "Mr. Coleman," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I'm documenting yet another violation of our community standards. Your fence is in disrepair. Your barn needs painting, and frankly, this entire property is an eyesore that's bringing down everyone's property values." I stared at her for a long moment, trying to process what I was hearing. "Patricia, my property isn't part Wellington Heights. I've told you this at least a dozen times. My ranch has been here for 32 years. Your housing development was built 5 years ago. I was here first." She smiled that condescending smile I'd come to know and hate. "Actually, if you'd attended any of our community meetings, which you're required to do as a resident, you'd know that the county rezoned this entire area. Your property falls within our community boundaries now, which means you're subject to our rules and regulations. That's not how property law works." "I have the documents right here," she interrupted, pulling a thick folder from her designer handbag, signed by the county commissioner himself. "This entire section, including your ranch, is now part of Wellington Heights. That means your property is community property, and we have every right to ensure it meets our standards." I felt my jaw clench. "You're telling me that someone just decided my private land is now community property?" "Not someone, Mr. Coleman. The proper authorities." She flipped through her folder with manicured nails. "And according to our bylaws, all community property must be maintained to specific standards. Your fence is rusty, your barn is faded, and don't even get me started on those chickens I hear every morning. Those chickens were here before your McMansions existed. Irrelevant. You have 30 days to bring this property into compliance, or we'll be forced to take legal action. We may even be able to claim an easement for community access, given that this land is now technically within our boundaries." She smiled again. "Imagine that. A community garden right where your cattle graze. Wouldn't that be lovely?" She turned on her heel and walked back toward the cluster of cookie-cutter houses visible in the distance, leaving me standing there with rage building in my chest like a thunderstorm. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, digging through county records and property documents until my eyes burned. Patricia was partially right about one thing. There had been a rezoning, but what she conveniently left out was that rezoning didn't automatically make private property community property. My deed was clear. My property lines were clear. The HOA had exactly zero jurisdiction over my land. But I knew Patricia. She wouldn't let this go. She'd been trying to force me out since the day she moved in, complaining about everything from the smell of my horses to the sound of my rooster. She wanted my land, probably to expand her precious HOA community and increase her own property value. I needed to send a message. A clear one. The next morning, I called up Jake Morrison, a buddy of mine who'd done fencing work for ranchers across 3 counties. "Electric fence?" he asked when I explained what I needed. "How hot we talking?" "Legal but memorable," I said. "I want something that'll keep my cattle in and nosy HOA board members out." Jake laughed. Say no more. I know exactly what you need. 3 days later, Wellington Heights got a wake-up call. I'd installed a proper electric fence along the entire property line that bordered the HOA community. Not the rickety barbed wire that had been there before, but a professional-grade electric fence with clear warning signs every 20 feet. The signs were bright yellow with bold black lettering. Electric fence, private property, do not touch. The fence was perfectly legal. Texas law was clear about property rights and ranchers' ability to protect their livestock. I'd even had my lawyer review everything to make sure I was completely by the book. I was in the barn when I heard the second scream of the week. This time it was Todd Pemberton, the HOA vice president, who'd apparently decided to test whether my warning signs were serious. I walked out to find him stumbling backward from the fence, shaking his hand and cursing. "You can't do this," he shouted when he saw me. "This is assault. It's a legal electric fence on my private property." I called back. "There are warning signs every 20 feet. Maybe next time you'll respect posted boundaries." Patricia arrived within minutes, her SUV kicking up dust as she screeched to a halt. She jumped out, tablet in hand, already filming. "This is unacceptable, Mr. Coleman. You've installed a dangerous barrier without HOA approval." "I don't need HOA approval for improvements to my private property. This property is within community boundaries." "No, Patricia, it's not." I pulled out my own folder, much thicker than hers. I've got the original deed, the survey maps, and a letter from my attorney explaining exactly why your HOA has no jurisdiction here. I've also filed a formal complaint with the county about your harassment and your false claims about community property. Her face went from red to purple. "You can't." "I already did. And here's the thing about that rezoning you keep mentioning. Yes, the area was rezoned. But rezoning doesn't transfer property ownership or create HOA jurisdiction over existing private land. Any first-year law student could tell you that." Todd was still shaking his hand. He electrocuted me. "You trespassed and touched a clearly marked electric fence," I said calmly. "That's on you." Patricia drew herself up to her full height. "We'll sue. We'll take you for everything you've got." "Please do," I said, "because then we'll get to discovery, where my lawyer will ask you to produce these official documents that supposedly make my private ranch community property. I'm guessing those documents don't actually say what you think they say. In fact, I'm guessing you've been lying about your authority this whole time." The look on her face told me I'd hit the nail on the head. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter from the Wellington Heights HOA. Not a demand or a threat this time, but an apology. Turns out Patricia had been interpreting the rezoning documents rather creatively. When the HOA's actual lawyer reviewed my complaint and the evidence I provided, he'd informed the board that they had no legal leg to stand on. Patricia had been told in no uncertain terms to cease all contact with me or face personal liability for harassment.